everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of the Racco Strength and Fitness Podcast, the Patrick Mahomes episode. So diving right in, if you've been working out in a gym for any extended period of time, then you've probably at least heard of the term hypertrophy or ran into it in some capacity. Maybe you've overheard it in passing, maybe you know already exactly what it is, or maybe you have no idea what it is and this is the first time you're ever hearing this term in your life. Whichever category you fall into, today's video is dedicated to describing what hypertrophy is, how it occurs, and how we can achieve it. Let's take a look. Ultimately, hypertrophy is muscle growth, but to really explain what it is, we need to get a little more specific. Hypertrophy is muscular enlargement through resistance training. Primarily, this is going to be measured by an increase in muscle cross-sectional area or muscle growth in diameter at its largest point. Now, yes, hypertrophy occurs when you pick things up and put them down over and over and over again. But to really understand how hypertrophy occurs, we need to look at it at a cellular level. Hypertrophy is achieved by an increase in protein synthesis and a reduction in protein degradation. This increase in synthesis and reduction in degradation puts our bodies in an anabolic state. Wait, anabolic? Like anabolic steroids? Yes, exactly like that. See, anabolic is a metabolic state where our body is building, and things like steroids help the body to facilitate and accelerate that growth. Hence, anabolic steroids. Contrastingly, catabolic or catabolism is the metabolic state where our body is breaking tissue down for energy. Our bodies are constantly switching between states of anabolism and catabolism depending on what it needs. If we have too much energy and material, anabolism occurs. If we need more energy, we enter catabolism to provide that energy. It's a constant cycle. In order to achieve hypertrophy, we need to have more anabolism than catabolism, which brings us back to our main point of protein synthesis. The continued synthesis of protein causes an increase in the number of myofilaments. Now, without getting too confusing, myofilaments are the proteins that are the smallest part, or building blocks if you will, of muscle fibers. These new myofilaments are added to the periphery of your already existing myofibrils, which exist within muscle fibers. As more and more myofilaments are created due to increased synthesis, the myofibril's diameter will enlarge. As the myofibrils enlarge, this in turn will enlarge the entire muscle fiber and collectively enlarge the associated muscle or muscle group. Now there's another way for muscles to enlarge, and this process is called hyperplasia. However, hyperplasia is somewhat of a controversial topic as not all experts believe it's possible to achieve in humans. Hyperplasia, unlike hypertrophy, which is the growth of specific muscle fibers, hyperplasia is an increase in the number of fibers due to pre-existing fibers splitting in half long ways to create two fibers out of one. Now there have been documented cases of this occurring in animals. It's a little less clear if this is achievable in the human body. As we discussed in the previous section, hypertrophy is muscle growth due to an increase in protein synthesis and a decrease in protein degradation, or putting our body in an anabolic state. So how can we achieve a state where our protein synthesis exceeds our protein degradation? Ultimately, hypertrophy depends on training stimulus centered around mechanical and metabolic factors. The mechanical factors will include the lifting of heavy loads, ideally between 50 and 70% of your 1 rep max, inclusion of eccentric muscle actions. Remember, this is the portion of the lift where your muscle is being elongated, not contracted, and low to moderate volume. Generally, this is described as about 4 to 5 different exercises and 2 to 3 sets of each of those exercises. Metabolic factors that promote hypertrophy will focus around low to moderate intensity of training. So again, this is not trying to set a personal record every time we step out onto the gym floor, but instead lifting weights in that 50 to 70% range of your 1 rep max. Slightly higher volume and shorter rest periods. So this would mean we want to complete between 8 and 12 reps per set and to have a rest period of about 30 seconds to a minute and a half. The combination of these factors appears to result in the optimal recruitment of muscle fibers, which is necessary for muscle growth. Another factor to consider when trying to achieve hypertrophy is the muscle fiber type that we want to recruit. As you may or may not already know, human skeletal muscle fibers can be grouped into two main categories: type 1 muscle fibers, or you may have heard them called slow twitch muscle fibers. These have a longer, slower contraction speed and are more responsible for aerobic or endurance type activities. These type 1 fibers have the least potential for cross-sectional growth and play a minimal role in overall hypertrophy. The other main group of fibers are type 2 fibers. These fibers can actually be broken down even further into subcategories of type 2A, type 2X, and type 2AX. These type 2 muscle fibers are responsible for fast twitch contractions and therefore more strength-related activities. These fibers are more susceptible to cross-sectional growth and therefore more responsible for hypertrophy of the muscles. Something can't come from nothing, and this holds true especially in the fitness world. Now, it is not my intent to dive deeply into the nutrition of hypertrophy because that would need its own video, but I would like to address that you cannot gain muscle if you're not giving your body what it needs to build, and what it needs is food and sleep. Adding muscle while in a caloric deficit is impossible because your body has nothing to build with. It would be like knocking down a wall in your house for a renovation and expansion and then giving your contractor no materials to rebuild with. And here's the tricky part. How do you eat enough of a caloric surplus to allow your body to become anabolic, but not too much of a surplus as to where you gain body fat? It's a tough question. I usually have two recommendations for people when asked about how to eat for hypertrophy without gaining body fat. The first is jumping right into a 200 to 500 calorie surplus. This would depend on your training rigor, amount of non-exercise activity you get throughout the day, and of course your size as a person. Observe yourself for a month or two, and if you feel that you're gaining muscle and maintaining your ideal level of body fat, continue with your current plan. If you feel you've gained too much body fat or you haven't gained any muscle, adjust your nutrition accordingly. The second method I suggest is to begin training without adjusting your nutrition. Let your body adjust to the new training regimen before making too many tweaks with nutrition. If you're already eating in a caloric surplus, your body will begin to use some of those extra calories to build muscle, and we can slowly adjust your caloric intake as needed. If you're in a caloric deficit, we can slowly start to introduce 200 to 300 more calories into your daily intake as needed. That's all for me, everyone. I hope you were able to learn something that you'll be able to apply in your future training. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more training content in the future. Happy training, everyone, and remember, grab the bull by the tusks.